Hi guys, this is my second episode of Revolutionary Rants. Here I just say what's on my mind any given day about anything relating to black or brown liberation. Last episode I received a recommendation in the comments to watch a video titled Marxism versus Black Nationalism. So here I'm just going to give you my thoughts on that video and things I wrote down while I was watching it. I will put the link in the description for anyone who wants to watch it. It is a bit long. It's 45 minutes or so, but I do recommend it. It was very thought-provoking. Yeah, let's get into it. I'd say I reject the idea of black nationalism that involves the bourgeoisie as we've seen in past forms. But even in those past forms, what you saw was black hope, which a lot of working class black people didn't mind the idea of hope. They didn't care if it was coming from a rich black person or etc. It was seeing the pride and hope that they had lacked for so long embodied. They didn't care about the class issue. They cared that someone was telling them that their skin mattered because someone had always been telling them their skin didn't matter. And I mean, if the damage is racial, then the healing has to be racial as well. And I'm not saying that class can't be in that process at some point, but the immediate healing to the racial damage needs to be racial healing. And so that's where I stand with that. Less of a criticism, I think more of a question I had regarding that video has to do with Marcus Garvey. I think maybe it skipped over like a lot of the reasons that led to the failure of the UNIA, including, Garvey was, thrown in prison, kicked out of the US. There's lots of, FBI, and God knows what else they did, what hasn't been revealed. But there's a lot of government meddling in his operation for black nationalism, right? Like they sabotaged his ships, charging for mail fraud. They just did a lot of things to try to mess him up. So maybe I would question if simply the lack of class consciousness in his organization contributed to its failure as much as that video implied. I would have liked maybe if it went over that a little bit. As a black person, I know I do care a lot and just as much about resolving that damage and having that pride in myself just as much as the class revolution and such. So just that's my personal perspective on it. I really do think that black people have to, and this is I'm specifically talking about the US, become their own political force, become a meaningful political force to where they can even take up the problem of Marxism. I think it's a tiny bit idealistic to think that they can look past the racial problem, given their history with it. The racial liberation, even if it is intertwined with class, it still needs to be dealt with as its own problem. And from there, I think Marxism is much more appealing and it's a lot less difficult to convince people of. Marxism itself is correct about liberation and how it happens and what's needed. I think what really gets me stuck in terms of Marxism or Afro-Marxism is the practicality of its demands. I'm not too sure if the working class in any given community, in any given country, would be willing to take up the international struggle, right? It's very easy to mobilize people as far as Marxism goes when they have absolutely nothing. But I think any collective's main goal is not to maybe reach an ideological perfection, but it's more so to get away from the bottom. If any given working class in any country, they stage a Marxist revolution, as it's happened many times, even after the success of that group, they very rarely expand to the international level. Even the Soviet Union, initially never got there. Is it because at the end of the day, a lot of working people are really just invested in their liberation and in their material well-being, that it's a lot harder to relate to them the conditions of people outside of their sphere? Many people haven't even left their country or their community. How much harder is it going to be to maintain the active participation of your revolutionaries once their families and friends and their own lives are taken care of? And I don't want to attribute it to human nature because I don't know if that's human nature, but I can understand the perspective of someone who fights to overthrow their oppressor in their country and then calls it a day.